That ends our action agenda. Next is our discussion agenda, which is first the proposed school board schedule. And I suppose that's you, Mr. Bounds.
Yes, ma'am. We've included in your packet under Exhibit F the proposed board meeting schedule for next year. And as you may recall, we do tend to use the Center for Advanced Technical Studies a little bit more in the summertime, as we don't want to impose on schools. During the school year, we have a cycle where we do a Dutch Fork cluster school, an Irmo cluster school, and a Chapin cluster school, and rotate through that each year. There are times we get off schedule a little bit as we have to change the board schedule, but that's certainly our intent, and the schedule is in your packet for your consideration.
Okay. Any discussion, any questions about this? Ms.
I just have a comment. I think it's really good to continue to go to the schools, and I appreciate that you put this together, because I know we're very proud of the center, and it has so much, it has newer technology. I understand that, but I think our school board meetings need to be as accessible to everybody over the year. You know, at some point in time, I know that we used to do it that way. It would be that way. It was people in a certain area might not have to drive to Chapin or out to the center, and this way it shares it. And plus, I think we're proud of our schools, and I think it's good for people from all the different schools to sometimes come to meetings in other schools.
Yes, ma'am.
So I like what you've done.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bounds. And last, we saved the best for last, I suppose, is the 2016 capital budget. And Mr. Carlin is going to guide us through this.
While Mr. Carlin's setting up, I'm going to give you a little bit of background, if that's okay.
Sure.
We've done things a little bit differently this year than you probably are used to seeing in the past, whereas we would come to you on an annual basis with a capital budget. What we try to do is put together a long-term, address some long-term needs, looking at things to maintain our physical plants, addressing technology needs, activity bus replacements, renovations driven by curriculum, some school identified needs, and obviously we always have things that come up on an annual basis, so we try to build in contingency funds there as well to try to address those as they pop up. This budget was developed based on what we currently can expect to receive at the current millage rate, so we're trying to leave it level, and hopefully our assessments will grow and the amount we have available on an annual basis will grow, but we have not built that into this. So what you have here is a five-year, $50 million capital needs plan as opposed to a one-year, $10 million plan. And obviously we're just asking for approval on year one, but we will be coming back and updating this on an annual basis for you so that we can always be giving you at least a 5-year snapshot of what we think our needs are going to be. I'll let Mr. Carlin take it from there so that he can kind of give you a little bit more details.
Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Hefner, staff. I'd like to begin with a quote by a fellow named Mark Schneider, who is a professor at the State University of New York. And he has studied and written widely on urban and suburban public policy with particular focus on educational policy under the Department of Education. And after studying many of the factors that go into making for a quality academic environment, looking at all kinds of things when it comes to class size, the type of school that's built, where the schools are built, the size of the schools, lighting, heating, those type things, he concludes by saying this, and I'm going to expand a little bit on the quote that's there. He says, spatial configuration, noise, heat, cold, light, and air quality obviously bear on students and teachers' ability to perform. Empirical studies will continue focusing on fine-tuning the acceptable ranges of these variables for optimal academic outcomes. But we already know what is needed: clean air, good light, and a quiet, comfortable, and safe learning environment. This can be, and generally has been, achieved within the limits of existing knowledge, technology, and materials. It simply requires adequate funding and competent design, construction, and maintenance. And School District 5 has certainly, at least during my tenure, enjoyed tremendous support, both from the board and the administration, making sure that we have the dollars necessary to maintain our physical plant and to keep our schools in excellent shape. And that's what we're planning on doing. We're doing it a little bit differently, or proposing to do it a little bit differently in giving you a 5-year outlook each year. Certainly only asking you to approve that current year, but we hope that you will give us a nod in what our plans are so we can continue to look down the road and make plans and preparations for those future projects for a number of reasons, including we want to get those projects designed as soon as possible. We want to get them out on the street as soon as possible so that we're not competing against our neighboring districts for the best contractors and having to pay higher prices because we don't get out on the leading edge. And let me see if I can make this thing work. Okay, there we go. This won't be shocking to any of our board members who have been here for a while, but these are our current capital needs that we typically have from year to year, and they include, of course, dollars that we need to put towards our physical plant, our existing schools and infrastructure. Of course, dollars to make sure that we're maintaining our technology, not only our infrastructure, but also make sure our devices are current. Our vehicle fleet when it comes to our activity buses, which of course are not supplied by the state, our equipment and furnishings, and finally, our school identified needs. And you will see all these reflected in this plan. As far as the physical plant, although this is not an exhaustive list, these are some of the items that we focus on from year to year to make sure we are addressing these needs within our schools. Of course, life safety is also always going to be our number one. Our building envelope, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. Of course, the interior finishes from our carpet, painting, ceilings, those type things, as well as some of our other systems, as well as outdoor facilities and landscaping. What we're doing a little bit differently this year, and you'll see it reflected in the plan, is we're giving our primary effort towards those areas of the facilities that we know that if we don't commit the necessary dollars to, they degrade, and they degrade in a big hurry. And to try to catch up on these type systems, which include any of your systems that represent our building envelope, our windows, our roofs, if we don't address those systems first, then trying to recover once you get into a deferred maintenance situation becomes really problematic and really expensive. So you'll see that our primary effort in the plan is life safety, of course. Safety always comes first. The building envelope, air quality with our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, and then our lighting systems. Now, we also know we need to address these other needs that you see below. But how we've structured the plan is that our primary dollar focus is going to go towards those major systems. And then as dollars become available, because we get good bids on projects, and also a couple of categories I'll talk about in a minute that we've set aside in line items, we hope to handle these other areas that are certainly as important in our facilities, but not as critical as some of these others on top. If you'll go to Exhibit G in your board packet and look at the spreadsheet, which represents fiscal years 2015 and 16 through 2019 and 20, you'll see that under maintenance and new initiatives, our primary dollars again are focused on our outside of our facilities, as well as a couple of other needs that we have that have come up, including a fire alarm system at Nursery Road Elementary School. We also, you will remember, those of you who were on the board last year, that we committed some design dollars to renovating the front entrance of Dutch Fork Middle School. You'll see that project in here now that we've done the design effort. On page 2 of your worksheet there, under the category 09 District, that's where you'll see some specific line items where we plan to address some of those secondary requirements under both school identified needs as well as our contingency line item there. But again, as dollars, and we believe they will, fall out from our other projects, we plan to put those towards these other needs we've identified here. So with that, I'll be pleased to entertain any questions you may have.
Ms. Baumgartner.
I was wondering, when we renovated Leapart Elementary,
Yes, ma'am.
we folded in, since we were already renovating.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought we already added new heating and air.
We did. The reason you see that project in there is that we discovered last year with the beginning of school, we ran into some humidity problems throughout the district. They were fairly acute at Leapart Elementary. And so what we're proposing to do here is to slightly modify those existing HVAC systems to address some of those humidity problems that we experienced.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Just following up on that, since that's so new, is that covered under a warranty that?
We're out of warranty on those systems.
How long was that warranty?
Normally, our warranties for construction material are a year.
And so the HVAC is only for a year?
Well, we're not doing a wholesale replacement. It's to do some slight modifications to them to make them run a little bit differently than they're currently designed to do.
Okay. Ms. Lovelace.
I actually have a couple of questions, but
Yes, ma'am.
when we're talking about changing the lighting in the schools, are we going to try to go to LEDs?
I'm glad you asked. Yes, we are.
Okay, good. At Chapin Middle, I was there a few weeks ago and noticed that there were quite a few acoustical tiles that looked pretty rough, like there were leaks. And in here, I don't see anything with roof replacement. So.
I'm sorry, ma'am. In which location was that?
At Irmo Middle.
Irmo Middle, okay.
Did I say Chapin
You
Middle?
said Chapin.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got my mind messed up here. Irmo Middle.
Yes, ma'am.
And like I said, the tiles, like there had been leaks in the roof, and I was just wondering if making sure that, we're going to replace the HVAC system lighting and the ceiling, that we're making sure that our roof is in good shape.
Yes, ma'am. We actually have a roofing project at Irmo Middle School. Unfortunately, because this plan is confined to the 5 years, it's actually in that 6th year, and we're going to address both the roof on what I call the 7th and 8th grade building, the building to the right, if you're facing the campus, as well as the gymnasium building. That is contained in there.
Okay.
I know the leak you're talking about. I think it was in the right building.
I don't even know what school I was in.
But
So, yeah.
that, I can speak specifically to that leak. We did a little bit of roof repair on that roof on a joint during our kitchen renovation a couple of years ago. And because of the heavy rains we've had recently, we experienced one particular problem around where the lockers were in that building. And we think we've got that corrected now, but it's a fairly localized problem. So we should be fine until we get to that 6th year.
Ms. Watson, I have a few. Can I ask one more real quick?
Okay, one more and then.
And then,
Mr.
well,
Gant and Ms.
I'll share. On the Oak Point Elementary with the repair
Yes, ma'am.
building foundation, can you explain that to me?
Part of Oak Point Elementary, because of the positioning of the school on the site, there is a wing of that building that was built on a good bit of fill dirt. There's also a retaining wall about 50 or so feet off the end of that building. There's been some settling that's occurred at the end of that building, and what you see there is for us to go in and do some foundation repair and also some cosmetic fixes on the interior and the exterior of the building to correct that.
Did you have a follow-up to that?
I'll think on that. Sir.
Okay, Mr. Gant.
Mr. Carl, I'm going to
Yes,
go
sir.
back to Leapart Elementary for just a minute, and I know this modification is a fraction of what the new systems cost, but I guess my concern is that same thing that Ms. Watson had. This is a fairly new system. It was designed and put in by somebody, and I understand it's a life safety issue at this point. I mean, the mold remediation that we had and all, but I'm very concerned going into the future. We're in the South. We know we have moisture. We know we have rain. that we'd be in this situation with what I consider at this point to be a relatively new system. So
Yes, sir.
I guess I'm looking, and I know this, you're not new construction side of it, but we all have to learn from this. What can we do better next time to not get into this situation? And I would think whoever designed that system, knowing where we live, know where we are, I'm disappointed we're having to do that out of our pocket, honestly.
Yes, sir.
And I would hope there'd be some recourse from somebody that designed it or had overall jurisdiction, but I'm not hearing that.
Well, there may be additional discussions that come with this and the Oak Point.
Okay.
But what we're concerned about right now is getting the problems repaired, and then we'll consider how we proceed from there after we've made the repairs. I will tell you this. HVAC is one of those disciplines that there's a lot of philosophies on how you do it. I will tell you that in the last few years that I have brought in somebody, his name's Donnie Pittman, who works with Mecca Engineers, is well respected all over the state, and I'm relying heavily upon him to advise us as we go forward with all our HVAC systems. I think his philosophy on how he approaches it is probably the best I've seen. And so he's the one that I consulted to help us solve the problem at Lee Park. Was a different engineer that put the system in to begin with. But again, more conversation will come on where we go from here.
Well, I'm encouraged it might be some more conversation, and I realize we had a new roof, we had new construction, we had enclosed areas that used to not be, and at the end of the day, I know this is a modification, but I'm glad to hear that too.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Hammond?
My question is all about the mold and mildew too.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know, and I understand what you found here, but I know that there are teachers and students that talk about we may have some mold. I want to know what's our process to check out the safety of all our schools, because some of the people that I've talked to feel like they have mold and mildew in their schools that maybe hadn't been addressed. And
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
asking you as our expert, is it you or who do we have that I can assure them the safety has been checked out in every school? Because when you have a problem with a new school, you really can have one with an older school. And I know all over the not just District 5, there were many districts with mold and mildew in the news, and it really does make people sick. So it is a health issue. And
Do you
I'm
want
just
him-
glad we're
Ms.
addressing.
Hammond, can he answer that question for you that you just asked?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Let me start by saying this. What we experienced, not last summer, but the summer before, was really unique when it comes to South Carolina. I mean, it is very uncommon when we're going to have such cool temperatures and the kind of rain that we experienced. I don't know how many year cycle you can expect that kind of thing to happen, but it's fairly remote. So you're right. I mean, we had indoor air quality issues across the state. We were not unique by any means in that regard. However, we have a number of methods for checking in our schools and making sure that we don't have mold and mildew issues. Number one, we've got our custodial staff, our facility supervisors who have been specifically trained in this area to identify when we have these problems. Of course, with the event that we have, everybody received more education, more training on, if you sense a problem, please let somebody know. And then somebody from my staff, whenever we have a complaint or at least a concern that there may be a problem, we go out, we do an initial check, we do a test. If it looks like we do have a problem, then we go to further testing with an engineer and a professional testing firm. I can tell you we really don't have in this district indoor air quality problems for the most part. 9 times out of 10, if we go out to it, or probably even more than that, if we're brought in to check out a problem, it really is not an indoor air quality problem. It may be an odor problem. It may be too much dust in the room. That tends to be what it is. However, we do take indoor air quality very seriously, Because of that event, we have redoubled our efforts when it comes to what kind of systems are we putting in there, how are we treating the outside air that we're required to bring in to provide the right oxygen to our learning environments, and to make sure that we get that air treated and dried out before it gets in our facilities.
And
We-
Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
if there's mold, I mean, I know I've seen it in some schools, it can actually come through the concrete, you know, and you can actually see it.
You can find it in all
Yeah.
kinds of interesting areas. You got to have three
So-
things for mold and mildew. You've got to have a food source, you've got to have oxygen, and you got to have moisture. If you take any one of the three out of the way, you can't have it, and that's what we focus on.
Just
Mr. Hotterwell?
Yes, sir.
That's just one question up. The stadium upgrade at Chapin High School?
Yes, sir.
What's that?
Well, and of course, we're just closing a bond project out at Chapin High School, but you do have inadequate facilities in the stadium area. The home side needs attention in the restroom areas, the stadium itself, the concrete needs to be addressed. The visitor side of the field is certainly inadequate for the size of the school now. The restroom facilities on the visitor side are inadequate, as well as press box needs and those type of things at the softball. There's a lot of facilities in that area that need to be addressed, and the reason you see that project in there is to try to address those deficiencies.
And that facility is how old is Chapin's facility?
Oh, boy.
You have any idea?
The initial Chapin High School building, and I believe the stadium were both constructed in the 60s or early 70s, but I'm not positive. I'll find out and let you know.
Was that?
Yes.
Mr. Carlin,
Ma'am.
with regards to the Chapin High School, I think we'd like to know how that decision was made to recommend the stadium upgrade. I know that there was a lot of interest and talk about a fine arts center
Okay.
for Chapin High School. So I think we'd like to know who made this recommendation and how that weighs with a fine arts center and other needs at Chapin High School.
Help, boss.
Madam Chair, because we have a stadium and we know we have needs, that's why we've addressed that. We don't obviously have a fine arts center there to address in this capital needs program, so that's why we haven't done anything. I think that's probably something that the board would have to look at with any future building needs that we would have, because it would be quite a bit more expensive, I think, than what we see here. But we do know there's some inadequate facilities there in the stadium, especially on the visitor side. The concession stand is really unusable now. The restrooms, I don't know if you've been in them, they're subpar. We have press box needs for a softball field, that kind of thing. So that's what we're trying to address here.
And that's $2.4 million?
Yes, ma'am, that's over 2 years, that's correct.
And how much did we estimate a fine arts center at Chapin would cost?
I remember it being somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 to $12 million, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Baumgartner.
One of the things, that brings up a good question. Bathrooms, toilets, and things like that need replacing on a regular basis. Is that something you look at or as needed in your 5-year plan?
Yes, ma'am. Certainly, restroom areas, painting, carpeting, those type of
Right.
things. We know we have those needs as well, and that's what we plan to address is in the second tier of our plan. And that is as dollars hopefully become available from some of our bigger projects, as well as our contingency areas to address some of those other needs.
What is the lifespan? I remember when I first came on the board, that'd be 10 years ago, there was some concern about the bathroom facilities at Chapin High Stadium then, and I think we addressed it that summer, that year. So exactly, you know, in a bathroom in a typical stall, the walls, locks, I know this is getting some of the weeds, but, and what kind of lifespan are we looking at? How often do we expect to have to replace things like that?
Well, a full-blown complete replacement could be 30 years, 40 years. Addressing parts of those, painting, maybe some of the flush valve for water closets and urinals, those type things, more frequently. What we did at Chapin High School specifically, just a couple of minor things. One was to provide a ramp area to get in and out of those facilities. They were not handicap accessible. They were just very minor things that were done with those restroom facilities. It certainly was not an exhaustive renovation.
Mr. Carlin,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to know, and I think the board would like to know, who made that recommendation for the stadium upgrade for us to spend $2.4 million? And I think we would also like to know the comparison of improving the stadium in comparison to the fine arts facilities at Chapin High School. I think we need to have an analysis of that and a thorough analysis. This is not enough information for us to make a decision, especially when we have heard so much about the needs of the Fine Arts Center.
Certainly.
Ms. Hammond.
This is just a general question, but it goes to your question. I'm just remembering on the years I've served on the board that usually these projects are brought to us by the principal. I mean,
Well,
I'm not
I'd
saying
like
that,
to
but
know. That's all right.
I
That's
wanna
why
know
I'm
the
asking.
process.
That's why I'm asking him, Ms. Hammond.
But we've talked about this before. I'm not talking about this specific thing like you're asking. I'm saying in general, that's what I've always been taught as in boardmanship, that's
Thank
how we
you.
get it.
Thank you. Did you have a question?
No, that's my statement.
Okay.
I-
Mr. Gant.
I have just a follow-up, and I think we've asked probably a lot about the Chapin High Stadium, but Mr. Carlin, from my perspective, it's probably real interesting. I think we did a pretty much of a stadium upgrade at Irmo High School just a couple of years ago, to maybe look at the numbers that were used to upgrade there with a probably pretty similar situation. I'd be interested in seeing that comparison. And then the second part, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think I am. But Ms. Hammond brought up the issue about the mold, and we had a lot of teachers that seemed to have a concern. But I do remember you took very decisive action when we had the mold situation with remediation and checking all our schools. But if you wouldn't mind just going over that just for a second, I think every school we have was checked out, and those that needed to be addressed were, and then it's being monitored fairly frequently now. But I do remember that point of.
And I may miss a detail or two, but you are correct. We did a very extensive look at the time we had the problem, which was in the summer of 2013, is that right? And then at that point in time, we did extensive, what I would call professional development with our custodial and facilities staff, because prior to that time, they had not really been trained. It was not something that was on their radar. So we did extensive training for with our staff and also with our, not just our facility staff, but also with our principals to know what to look for and to set up routine checks throughout our district. And again, as if we see that there are specific areas of concern, we send in our folks to take a look at it, or if need be, bring in outside help to make sure if there's a problem that needs to be addressed. I think we're being very aggressive. Again, that was, as Mr. Carlin said, a new experience for us and a lot of other people in terms of what we learned from the rains of 2013.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr.
Ms. Lovelace.
Now, if I go back to my Oak Point on the foundation, Oak Point's a fairly new school. How old is it?
2006.
I guess what I'm trying to think is, would you consider this a normal settlement?
No, ma'am.
So, I mean, is this something like what Mr. Gant was talking about with the HVAC
Yes.
that we may look at?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Got my answer.
Any other questions? I have a question, or actually a few requests. Mr. Carlin, I believe several years ago, you helped organize our replacement system for the HVAC.
Yes, ma'am.
And actually, how far back do you have the charts and your records of the replacement of all of our schools?
Well, certainly when I got here in 1999, but we have data that dates back before then as well.
Well, probably just since 1999. Is that something that's on a chart that you just keep track of?
Yes.
That it's like on a single chart, it's not anything you would have to pull together documents and reports?
We would have to pull together a few different things to do it, but it's available.
Well, the only reason I ask is it just seems that we're always replacing HVAC systems.
Oh, yes, we are.
It seems that we do it all the time.
We do.
And
I can give you an idea, just for most of our equipment in the district, we're looking at around the 15-year point. Now, we tend to stretch them a little farther, probably between 15 and 20 years on our replacements, if it's air-cooled equipment, which is what most of our equipment is. Some of our newer schools, the center, Spring Hill High School, we have water source systems that tend to last a little bit longer. You're looking at the 20-year point for replacement. But we've got a bunch of systems in this district. And typically, you're going to see, certainly at a high school, many of our middles, we're replacing systems all the time. But we're systematically going through that school and replacing those systems on about that, somewhere around that 15-year point.
so when you talk about replacing an HVAC system at a school, maybe I misunderstand this. Maybe it's just a portion of the school.
That is correct.
Okay, now see, that
is
helps
correct.
me tremendously. I thought we were just doing a wholesale
Oh, no.
replacement.
No. And when we get into our bigger schools on roofs, you'll see in this plan, Dutch Fork High School roof replacement is a 3-phased replacement. Chapin Middle is a 2-phased replacement. Irmo High School HVAC, you're probably looking at a 12-phase replacement. I mean, but you're right. We're replacing portions as we move through a school.
Well, that's very important. That helps
Yes,
a
ma'am.
lot. I just couldn't quite figure it out. The other thing that I think we'd like to see, number 28, Dutch Fork Middle School, you talk about a front office entrance
Yes, ma'am.
renovation. Do you have some simple drawings that the board could take a look at?
Certainly.
I think that would be nice in our next board packet. And also, can we see number 9 under the district? Can we see the chart of the school identified needs, please, in our next board packet? You see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Ms. Baumgartner.
Mr. Carlin, at Seven Oaks Elementary, roof replacement next year. Didn't we also replace a roof when we were doing the renovations there?
We replaced a good portion of the school's roofs. There's 2 roof sections that remain, kind of like at Chapin High School. We addressed a lot of the roofing at Chapin High School. We actually did last year the Fine Arts Building in the upper portion of the Activities Building, or what used to be the Activities Building at Chapin High. Now it's A Building. And there's a project in there to complete the bottom portion of A Building at Chapin High School.
I'm talking, did I say Chapin? I meant,
Well,
okay, I was
but
talking about
just-
Seven Oaks Elementary.
Hey,
But like we're doing it at Chapin and finishing that up, we're doing the same thing at St.
Okay.
Louis. Yes, ma'am.
Just,
All right. Any last questions? All right, I don't see any, so thank you very much,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Carlin and Mr. Richardson. That concludes our discussion agenda. I will accept a motion to adjourn. Ms. Baumgardner,
I move that we adjourn.
is there a second? Mr. Haltwander? Second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed, that passes 6-0. Thank you very much, and drive safely, everyone.